right. So classmates, staff, faculty, friends, and family, I am honored to address you all, but first let me assure you that this will not be your typical graduation speech because I am not your typical graduation speaker. I don't speak necessarily on behalf of the undergraduate students, I speak on behalf instead of my community. So to set the stage, I want to share a statement from a civil rights soldier named Stokely. Stokely said, "Black people have no time to play nice, polite parlor games, especially when the lives of our children are at stake. Anything less than clarity, honesty, and forcefulness perpetuates the sliding over, dressing up, and soothing down of the true hopes, feelings, and demands of an oppressed Black people." So following in his footsteps, I will address you all here today with clarity, honesty, and forcefulness. And because the lives of Black children and adults continue to be at stake, and we all have a role to play. That role will either be in continuing the oppression of Black people or fighting for the final freedom of these oppressed peoples. And this might seem like an exaggeration, and it might seem out of place at graduation, but I assure you it is neither. It is not an exaggeration to say that Black people are oppressed and that our lives are at stake. I know they are at stake because I stand before you in a Black body bearing the burden of an eternally traumatized soul, forever unable to unsee the body of a 12-year-old boy dropped to the ground in the park where he was playing. That boy, Tamir Rice, was shot seconds after murderers masquerading as police arrived at the park where he was playing. Beyond Tamir Rice, the names of Sandra Bland and Tanisha Anderson and Michael Brown and Charlena Lyles and Eric Garner and Philando Castile and Rakia Boyd and Jordan Edwards and Maya Hall and the lives and the names of so many others have been etched into my memory for eternity. The fact that Black bodies are the constant victims of violence and brutality by the boys in blue should illustrate to you of our oppression. And if it doesn't, I would like to remind you that across the nation, we also face gentrification and mass incarceration. Now, beyond our borders, the situation is even worse. Villages in Cameroon are being burned, people in Yemen are starving, and the Sudanese are being massacred. Yet the world stands silent. This silence is not to mourn, but to ignore. Now you must be wondering at this point, what does any of this have to do with graduation? Now I bring this to your attention so that you understand the state of the society we are about to become full participants in. Today, for many of us, marks the end of our education, but it is truly the beginning of so much more. Whether you continue to walk the halls of academia or pursue an industry or government career, you will be entering into positions of power and privilege. And what you choose to do with that power and privilege will define your legacy. Now, when it comes to the oppression faced by Black people, you have three options. Option one, you could turn a blind eye and allow the system to persist in its treatment of these oppressed peoples. Option two, you could actively participate in that oppression. Option three, you can join Black people in our continued fight for freedom from oppression. If you want to choose options one or two, then I will simply pray for you. But if you want to choose option three, then please come with and listen to me. And let me tell you what there is that we can do to help make Black and African people free. First, before you work with our communities, you must first work on yourself. You must educate yourself on the issues and engage in serious self-reflection to understand how you unintentionally perpetuate and participate in oppression. You must understand that Black people do not have the emotional energy to educate every well-intentioned white savior that wants to work on our community without first working on themselves. Second, you must understand that just because you want to work with the community does not mean that the community wants to work with you. Black people are coping with centuries of intergenerational trauma, and some community organizations may not want your help. Please understand that this is simply self-preservation. Third, listen to Black and African people when we speak. We don't say things just to say them, so listen. For instance, when we say that capitalism corrupts our communities, when we say that the modern manifestations of prisons and police must be abolished, when we say that the military must be minimized, listen to us. Many of us see capitalism, prisons, police, and the military as systems that oppress our communities domestically and globally. So I would suggest you start your studies with understanding these systems. Last and most importantly, as you study, as you learn, please work to change your communities, especially white communities. There is a lot of work that must be done, and every person here today must at some point make a decision. You all must decide whether you will fight for justice or stand on the side of injustice. Because every day you live, you shape history. No matter your path or your position, you have a role to play, and I will hope you all will fight for freedom. Thank you.